The story of Lamia Flight 2933, which involved a football team, is based on official accident reports and eyewitness accounts. The audio recordings in the video are real recordings from the accident. On November 28, 2016, at Viru International Airport, a regional flight was being prepared for flight by an Avro RJ-85 passenger aircraft manufactured in the UK. With its 4 engines, the Avro RJ-85 was a highly robust and well-engineered aircraft. Due to its 4-engine configuration, the Avro RJ-85 was considered relatively expensive compared to other aircraft models. Viru International Airport, situated in Bolivia, is the largest airport in the country. Flight 2933 of Lamia Airlines, a Bolivian charter company, was a charter flight, which refers to the temporary leasing of an aircraft for a short period, typically organized by travel agencies. During busy holiday seasons, travel agencies actively organize flights by chartering planes, ensuring efficient transportation for travelers. Lamia Flight 2933 was getting ready for a trip to José María Córdoba International Airport in Medellín, Colombia. Having relocated from São Paulo, Brazil, to Santa Cruz, the team would then continue their journey to Medellín. The aircraft made its first flight in 1999 and had previous service with other airlines. It went into storage between 2010 and 2013 before being acquired by Lamia, a Venezuelan-owned airline operating in Bolivia. The aircraft is currently 17 years and 8 months old. In the cockpit, there were 3 individuals, including 2 male pilots and 1 female pilot. There is Captain Miguel, aged 36, First Officer Ovar, aged 47, and Second Officer Sissy. 36-year-old Captain Miguel also served as an instructor pilot within the company. The first officer and captain were highly experienced pilots, accumulating nearly 7,000 flight hours. On board, there were a total of 73 passengers and 4 crew members. Among the passengers were 22 players from the Brazilian Chapacoense football club, 23 staff members, 21 journalists, and 2 guests. The team was en route to Medellín to compete in the away leg of the 2016 Copa Sudamericana final against Atlético Nacional. The players of the football team, who had a remarkable season, were filled with excitement for the upcoming matches they would be playing in Colombia. Under normal circumstances, the plane would make a refueling stop at an intermediate airport on its journey from Santa Cruz to Medellín. After refueling, it would continue directly to Medellín. However, due to the late departure time, the airport at their designated refueling stop was closed and did not offer refueling services. It is common for regional airports to operate within specific hours and not remain open 24 hours. The planned flight distance from Santa Cruz to Medellín is 1598 miles under normal conditions. The RJ-85 aircraft has a range of approximately 1,600 nautical miles, which means the planned route length is close to the aircraft's maximum range. Despite pressure to approve a direct flight to Medellín, an administrative officer at Santa Cruz rejected the crew's flight plan multiple times. This was due to concerns about the aircraft's range being almost identical to the flight distance. As a result, the flight plan was modified to include a refueling stop in Bogotá, Colombia instead. Let's take a quick break. We've put a lot of effort into this video, so if you find it informative, please remember to subscribe and like. Your support allows us to create more content for you. Within minutes, the crew received clearance to push back. The RJ-85 began its taxi. Flight 2933 took off from Santa Cruz at 18:18. 2 hours later, while cruising at an altitude of 33,000 feet, the crew engaged in discussions about fuel calculations and the potential need to land at Bogotá for refueling. This adjustment was made to ensure that the route remained within the aircraft's range. After refueling at their first stop in São Paulo, the captain of the aircraft made a decision not to refuel at the second stop in Santa Cruz, despite the fuel level being critically low. The captain might have believed that the remaining fuel would be sufficient for the remaining journey. At that time, the tower attendant in Medellín suggested a shorter route, unaware of the aircraft's fuel situation. As a result, the pilots reconsidered their initial decision and chose to proceed directly to Medellín without refueling. 3 hours have passed since their departure. As they approached the airport, the flight crew asked the controller for instructions to descend. Upon the ATC's approval, Flight 2933 is instructed to descend to 25,000 feet. The aircraft initiates its descent accordingly. After 10 minutes, As the aircraft reaches flight level 250, the master caution alert activates, indicating that they have approximately 20 minutes of fuel remaining. The approach controller in Medellin clears the flight to continue descending to flight level 210 and directs them towards a waypoint located about 30 kilometers short of the runway 01 threshold at Medellin Airport. At the time, 3 other aircraft are in a holding pattern at different flight levels, 190, 180, and 170. At 21:45, Flight 2933 reports entering the holding pattern at 21,000 feet. 4 minutes later, the flight requests priority for landing due to problems with fuel.
Mamá India de 933, entiendo, solicita prioridad para su aterrizaje, igualmente con problemas de combustible, ¿correcto? ¿Máximo?
The controller informs that she will provide vectors to the localizer, and it will take approximately 7 minutes before they can initiate their approach.
Ok, atento, entonces le daré vectores para proceder al localizador y efectuar la aproximación. Se estima aproximadamente en 7 minutos iniciar las aproximaciones.
At 21:52, the controller notifies Flight 2933 that there is another aircraft in a holding pattern below them and asks if they can continue to hold for a little longer.
India 2933 solicita vectores para acercamiento, señorita. Atento, tengo una aeronave por debajo suyo efectuando la aproximación y adicional están efectuando la revisión de pista. ¿Qué tiempo tiene para permanecer en su aproximación Lima India?
In response, the flight declares a fuel emergency and urgently requests a final approach course and immediate clearance for descent.
Estamos con emergencia de combustible, señorita, por eso le pido de una vez curso final. Y solicito descenso inmediato, Lima India 2933.
Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the controller cancels the approach for other traffic and grants priority to the Lamia plane carrying the football players. The controller explicitly states that it is clear for the aircraft to commence its descent.
Lima India del 933, ¿puede usted efectuar el viraje ahora por la derecha para iniciar el descenso? Tiene los tránsitos a 1 milla por debajo de usted. Clarito, la vista no es factor y solicitamos incorporarnos de una vez al localizador. Capitán, usted tiene 210, necesito bajarlo de nivel, tendría que girar por su derecha para iniciar su descenso. Negativo, señorita, estamos ya iniciando el descenso y estamos para el localizador.
The captain of the aircraft starts disregarding the controller's instructions, expressing a desire to head directly to the runway. This decision not only puts their own lives in danger but also poses a risk to the passengers on the other plane present in the airspace at that time. At this critical stage, the pilots initiate a rapid descent, disregarding the presence of other planes. In addition to the significant errors made throughout the flight, they commit a major mistake by extending the landing gear and flaps despite being dangerously low on fuel. These actions increase friction and result in a shorter gliding distance for the aircraft. As fuel reaches critically low levels, engine number 3 shuts down due to exhaustion, followed by engine number 4. However, the flight crew does not notify the controller about the engine failures. Meanwhile, the controller is faced with the challenging task of managing the other air traffic while the pilot's actions add to the complexity of the situation. Another major mistake they made was failing to officially declare an emergency. When an emergency is declared in aviation, all other air traffic is halted, and the full attention is given to the aircraft in distress. Firefighters and ground personnel are also prepared for a possible emergency. However, the pilots did not declare an emergency in this situation.
Lima India de 933 tiene un tránsito adelante suyo 18.000 pies, Alfa 320. Está identificado en el TICA, si lo tenemos arriba de nosotros, señorita, y estamos en curso final. La aeronave está con 18.000 pies, capitán. Está el tránsito ahora abandonando por la izquierda. Adicional tiene un tránsito, ya dejó libre 18.500. La vista y estamos con... Atento, Lima India del 933, 17.700, continúa en la aproximación, pista húmeda, llame por 10.000 en lo practicable y se requiere algún servicio en tierra. Le confirmaremos para el servicio en tierra y estamos a través de 16000 para el localizador.
At 22:55, the remaining two engines, number 2 and number 1, also stopped working. As a result, the aircraft experiences a complete electrical failure. Passengers on board start to realize that something is wrong. At this time, the aircraft is flying at an altitude of 15,000 feet, about 15.5 nautical miles south of the runway 01.
Señorita, Lima Maya India 2933 está en falla total, eléctrica total y combustible. Está libre y operable, lluvia sobre la estación Lima Maya India 933, bomberos alertados. Cuidado, Lima Maya India. Vectores, señorita, vectores a la pista. La señal radar se perdió, no lo tengo, notifique rumbo ahora. Vamos con rumbo 360. Con rumbo, mire por la izquierda, 010, procedería al localizador del borde Río Negro, una milla adelante del borde. Al momento usted se encuentra, correcto, le confirmo, por la izquierda con rumbo 350. Izquierda 350, señora. Sí, correcto, usted está a 0,1 milla del borde Río Negro. No lo tengo con la altitud, Lima Maya India. 9.000 pies, señorita. Vectores. Está a 8.2 millas de la pista. ¿Qué altitud tiene ahora? Lima Maya India 933, posición.
The plane, carrying football players, staff, and journalists, tragically crashed into a mountain near Medellin, Colombia, at an altitude of 2,600 meters. The crash site was located 16 kilometers away from the runway. Sadly, out of the 77 people on board, 71 lost their lives. However, there were 6 survivors, including 3 football players. Despite initial signs of life, one player couldn't make it. One of the surviving players also suffered the loss of a leg. The entire football community, team supporters, and the families of the players and staff were devastated and waited an explanation for the tragedy. The Colombian Aircraft Crash Investigation Unit initiated an investigation into the accident. They requested the assistance of the British company, which manufactured the aircraft, as well as the United Kingdom Aircraft Accidents Investigation Branch, to join the investigation in Colombia. The investigative team swiftly speculated on the cause of the accident, considering the absence of fuel smell and burn marks in the wreckage. Under normal circumstances, an explosion would have been likely due to the presence of fuel in the airplane involved in the collision. However, in this particular accident, the burn marks and fuel smell were significantly minimal. Upon discovering the fuel gauges, it was evident that they indicated zero fuel. It was unusual for an aircraft of this size to completely run out of fuel. Additionally, a thorough examination of all 4 engines revealed no technical issues. Initially, the controller faced significant blame for the accident, with many people pointing fingers at them. The media played a role in spreading unfounded accusations against the innocent controller. However, once the black boxes were recovered and analyzed, a different picture emerged. The recordings from the black boxes revealed that the pilots had indeed mentioned the low fuel situation in the aircraft. For weeks after the accident, it was conclusively confirmed that the plane had run out of fuel. This finding exonerated the controller from any responsibility, as it was clear that the fuel exhaustion was the main cause of the accident. During that time, the charter company Lamia was on the brink of bankruptcy. 2 out of the 3 planes owned by the company were inoperable due to financial constraints, and the company was unable to meet its employees' salary obligations. As previously mentioned in the video, the captain pilot, who was also a partner in the company, was well aware of the dire financial situation. In an attempt to cut costs, the captain intentionally loaded less fuel onto the plane, intending to reduce its weight. In doing so, the captain, driven by a desire to minimize flight expenses, put the lives of 76 people at risk. The accident also had a tragic aspect wherein, based on calculations, it was determined that if the landing gear and flaps had not been opened prematurely, there would have been enough altitude remaining to glide to the airport even after fuel depletion. Unfortunately, the early deployment of the landing gear and flaps by the pilots caused the plane to descend prematurely. Following the crash, the Bolivian government took action by suspending the company's operating certificate and confiscating the remaining 2 aircraft. In remembrance of the 71 individuals who tragically lost their lives in the Flight 2933 disaster.